Hello and welcome to the studio. I'm Peter Stjanovic and this is Breaking the Bubble, 2023's most important tech trends for marketers. I'm joined by some wonderful marketers right now. So Juicy, let's go straight into it. What technology is piquing your interest right now?
Well, there's two parts for that question. The one that is the most important one and the one that is probably the most interesting for the future. The most important one goes really back to basics, the business platform. And this is not really a technology, it's a combination of many tools. So taking your content management system and making sure that that integrates with the marketing automation, making sure that the marketing automation can then push things to CRM, but also connecting customer support data, all these things. So for me, the most important one and always most intriguing one, most difficult one to get right is the business platform. How does marketing connect all the different data pieces across the business so we understand the customers really well? And for the kind of interesting pieces, of course, AI, but I'm sure our colleagues and we will discuss that more in a second. But this is the thing that most companies still struggle, the foundation.
Yeah, almost the boring stuff sometimes can be overlooked.
I agree, I totally agree with that. And it's the stack that you have and how that becomes interoperable with everything else that you have and how you actually have the people to manage all of those different parts. And in many ways, those people collaborating together, because if you don't have the people, you can have as much technology as you want and they don't talk to each other, they're siloed. The systems might talk, interestingly enough, they might be integratable, but the teams sometimes need a bit of encouragement to do that, I think.
And that could be within marketing or across the organisational
Yeah,
boundaries.
I would absolutely extend that away from just marketing, particularly when we get into more digital and digital transformation. You start having to talk to loads of different teams on the front line and also in the back rooms as well. The IT teams become massively important for everybody.
You make a good point there about going back to basics. I don't think enough of us actually do that. We're all entranced by all this new cool tech and we think, oh, how could we use it? How could we use it? But actually, if we took a look back, there's probably some bits that we're not doing well that we should be doing that are the basics. And there's so much data in there. I think to your point about people, it's all very well having all this data and everything interconnected, but what's the data telling us? You know, we get it and we look at it and we go, well, actually, what's that saying?
And how can
this mean? Yeah, what does it mean, right?
And I think we're all very good at this. But I find a problem still is that the spreadsheets creep in. So although you've got a really good core system, we've just rolled out HubSpot, big fan of HubSpot, probably not meant to talk about brands, but HubSpot's great, but it's only as good as the number of people in the business that are using it and using the right part of it. And it's like, I've just written a white paper on A/B testing, so A/B testing is one of my little pet things at the moment, but A/B testing, it's again, if you don't do the research and you get the two dynamics wrong, you're A/B testing rubbish and you're putting more rubbish into the system.
One bit of rubbish against another bit of rubbish.
Yes.
One of them's incrementally tiny bit better rubbish, but it's still rubbish.
And then we're dealing with people, I think the younger generation marketers that are coming in, they want a quick fix, so they don't take enough time and they build, I find, we were talking about this earlier, my inbox is full of generated emails that think I want to buy something. Now, you can go and do whatever CRM course you're on, and you learn to do a process, you learn to do a workflow, and you write it. But the trouble is it hits my desk or your desk, and it doesn't relate to me at all. No. So I think, when you're talking about tech, getting the basics right is hugely important. Yeah.
I kind of have this idea with the teams where I sort of say, look, you have to think of it outside in versus inside out. So don't think of it, what are we trying to do for our customers to push them down channels and routes that we want, but what are we doing for them when they've got a job to be done, when they're trying to find out more information, what value can we give them? And if you try and put a value mindset on the content you generate or the systems you're putting in, customer value, not necessarily business value, they both equate actually, but fine. The point being is that you need to always think, what are we trying to help the customer do? Yeah. And that I think is really hard for people that are particularly new to marketing and they look at all the shiny new systems and tools and think, well, let's just use that one and we can get more stuff out. And
for non-marketers too.
True.
Because you're all in the tech sector, that's what connects you all. And you've got all these fellow team members wanting to guide you and the business into what they do and why they do it. Yeah. And sometimes the marketer's role is to sort of educate internally, the internal customers.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
But educating each other as well within marketing. I mean, the number of times I see metrics and data And I want to ask, so what?
Yeah.
You know,
Totally
it's
agree.
not in context. It's not with a benchmark. It's not meaningful. It's
Yeah.
just volume sometimes.
I always ask my guys, what is the role of marketing? And the role of marketing is not just help to sales to sell, it's also helping customers to buy. And the moment you focus on the second piece, you fundamentally change your way of thinking. How do you help clients to find information about your offering? How do you engage with them? How do you make it easy? Because in the end of the day, by the time they call the company and the sales, they know much more about the offering than
That's
the
changed.
sales themselves.
Yeah.
So this educated consumer is not just on B2C, B2B as well. People are really smart by the time they engage with you, and they know exactly how to negotiate and haggle to make a good deal
Well,
out of
also,
it.
I think as you go higher up the business, you know, somebody trying to get hold of me with one of those auto-generated emails, if someone rings my phone, my mobile phone, I don't have a desk phone anymore. If anyone, I'm sure that's the same for everyone. But if somebody rings my mobile phone, I don't know who it is, it annoys me.
Me too.
I don't like that. Please don't do that.
Noted, everyone, noted.
Please don't do that.
I think to your point, we love what we do, clearly, that's why we're doing it, but we're also keen to tell our story and, to your point, flipping it to actually what the customer wants to hear about and learn and how they might engage. And it's something, you know, we look at for web journeys, for other online digital journeys, even at events and organising those sort of activities and tactics. What makes it just right for the customer, and flip it round? If that was me, what would I want to hear? How would I want to be invited? How would I want to be interacting? Because we're so keen to tell our story, and we do it from our way.
First,
That's a nice
journey
point. And I
first.
think later in the conversation, when we come to trying to work out what's a bubble and actually what's the trend, we can actually look at that customer thing. But Juicy, you mentioned the second point, which I think many people laughed at, artificial intelligence. Now, it was going to come up. It is really important, I think, to discuss, given its potential, given actually how it's already changing some people's minds and businesses. Does anyone want to start on, if anything you're doing with large language models, machine learning, any kind of this open AI?
I think, well, I'm not going to call it an elephant because obviously it's going to be probably larger than that actually. But you know, ChatGPT and everything that's going on there, it's just hitting us. Our teams are asking about it. That it's all over sort of news and marketing, newsletters and online and everything else. But I think my organisation have looked at that already, and we've got. We're trying to think of a process of how we use it, because whilst ultimately we want it to be used for good, we know that there are bad actors there, and unfortunately it will be used for negative things.
Especially for such a nascent bit of technology. Do you know what I mean? It's very new, quite democratised.
We've been using it since the beta, Bard and ChatGPT, and we had a long conversation about it, so I've been using it for a year.
Wow,
I use it daily.
Yep.
So I'm one of the biggest advocates for this. It's not the answer to everything, but it gives you good structure, gives you a good starting point, and it can, when you're a marketeer, I work at home and my team are remote, so I need to keep the ideas coming or rewrite something, or something like we would say, one of my German colleagues will send me something in his kind of English, and ChatGPT will help it put it into my type of English. Yeah. And then I'll use Grammarly to check it. So I'm a great one for, these are just tools. They're not world savers. Yeah. But I have to say, Bard, there's Write as well, there's RYTE, which is another new one. Not so keen on Write, but I use Bard and ChatGPT. I'd say I'm on them an hour a day, using them to check.
Yeah, I do it daily.
Yeah.
And even down to things like, give me 10 different words for this word. Whereas you could go and do, the old synonym trick.
Better
on
the
Google,
word hippo or whatever.
But you can do that just down to that.
Yeah,
exactly.
That you can
and then
quickly crank something out.
Yeah.
It's great
in
for
seconds.
content.
Productivity levels, I think, that's the bit that's really accelerating.
Have you actually quantified that? Or is it just a sort of anecdotal?
No, it's anecdotal. I mean, you probably could, but I think at the moment you're just so overwhelmed with all the different things. And it's not just GPT or LLMs. You've got AI everywhere. I think there's a website one of my team sent to me that said there's an AI for that. And it's like literally 3 apps a day are coming out on that, and just constantly.
I mean, it's the difference between starting with a blank piece of paper
and
starting with an outline, a well-shaped outline.
Absolutely.
And content
gives you
to
your
edit
synopsis.
and refine, right? I mean, there's artificial is in the name. It's artificial intelligence. So it's not thinking for you, but it will pull all the data sources and give you a very good foundation.
That's it. And
start.
it needs some, it always needs some refinement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, tailoring to whatever you do, but to give you a starter for 10, it's amazing.
And for us marketeers, it's not bad, right? It's saving.
It's
so, as you say, you
writer.
haven't got a blank page.
It is.
No,
It replaces
it's
you know,
good.
somebody who's not particularly outstanding, but
Yeah.
I mean,
There's nothing
you know,
wrong
gives
with
you
it.
a really good starting point for anything. And the fact that you can QA it and you can refine it
Regenerate
and
it.
you can shape it in a different direction and ask it to consider different angles and different targets. That's really helpful.
Yes, I love putting in the style of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, in business and daily life, we talked about getting the recipes with the certain ingredients in it and with the low calorie, low fat. I asked it to generate a song for me for 3 brothers and a father, and it did it quite nicely. I asked it to use 5 chords, which I only can play 5 chords in my guitar, which turned out to be okay-ish. Yeah. So to be honest, I mean, I was in doubt 1.5 years ago about the whole AI, and now I'm embracing it. I have to say that I'm learning every day something new. I'm doing now the solution descriptions and use cases just because sometimes in my company it's difficult to get the product people to explain the real value to the marketplace. So I asked them different tools to say, what are the key use cases? And I gave the example of software-defined vehicle and what are the use cases? And then each use case, you can go deeper. So I actually create entire go-to-market marketing deck based on the framework that they give me, the details they give me. Then I go to my product people and say, tick in a box the ones that we can use, which our solutions can help to solve and which are the ones we don't. And sometimes they say, oh my God, we actually need to work on this topic. We have a gap on a roadmap. So I'm taking quite, I would say far, but I'm sure all the digital natives are now laughing and saying, you're not far, you're just scratching the surface.
To me, it's all about accelerating, isn't it? Yes. If you've got the ideas and you can sort of just throw the ideas in there, and it's nice because it's conversational, so you don't have to really think too hard, and then you iterate, you're always refining it down to the point where you get something that's good enough for you to then take elsewhere or refine yourselves. Software development as well, things like that. That's coding is just amazing.
So as leaders then, as all very senior marketers, what's your particular position of responsibility then when it comes to a new tech like this?
I think you have to be careful with it. Yeah. That's the big.
I did a little sharp intake of breath because there are so many variations of what could come out, and we're all saying, oh, it's great. We're loving it. We're really enjoying using it and what the output. But we have almost got to set a set of standards for our teams, maybe even for the use within your own organisation, to make sure that it is being used for good, because we know it will be and continue to evolve and be used, unfortunately, for evil out there.
And also being transparent about when we're using it as well, making a clear declaration that it's been used in development of content.
You also have to be really careful from an IP perspective, that you're not throwing away your business's IP every time you put something in. So you've got to be careful about what you're putting in there, and that's where I think you need some of that oversight and some guidance. But the flip side of it for me is I don't want to stifle people from experimenting, and I did a whole meeting on it, so we have a team meeting every week, and I did a whole meeting on let's just talk about how each of the departments, because they're all in there, how do you use it? And I said, come to the meeting. Everybody in the meeting came up with 2 ideas, and it's surprising how many people are actually using it. I'm like, right, I thought you'd done that. No, it's good. I think that's right, but again, temper that with, there always has to be some degree of checking and oversight.
I used it with my team around storytelling, actually, to skill building. Had them write their own personal narrative in the style of a Pixar movie outline. And then we used ChatGPT to actually generate different styles. And that was actually hilarious. But it got the creative juices going. It got everyone excited about what the potential was, whilst also seeing actually the different use of language and playfulness. It was fun.
Co-pilot is the term I've heard most often in regards to what's happening.
Dangerous co-pilot. Give him too much flight time.
But it's very similar to when you're designing in any of the CRM Salesforce, when you're doing a newsletter, it's the analogy I would like to say is when you get that email and it says fill in button where someone's used a template but hasn't actually put a word on that button. It's so irritating. But the same with chat, you need a check. You need to be, so you would never do an email campaign without blasting it to 3 of your senior exec, or, you know, a newsletter would be checked by at least 3 people. There needs to be, I think, processes and safe checks.
There's also things like the hallucination factor, which is a really important thing. So I went down a rabbit hole with it the other day of trying to get some response rates. It wasn't for email, it was for, you know, telephone call response rates, and say, give me some data on this. And it gave me 2 data points. And I said, tell me where those data points are from. And it sent me to a link. Click on the link, it's 404. And I'm like, you've got to be really careful where you're using that, because I might have used that in a management presentation, or one of the team could have used it. You just have to really reference what it's telling you.
Which sort of brings us back to the title, which is sort of breaking the bubble. Obviously, we're discussing, albeit a very large potential impact, technology, AI. There are many out there. When we think about these new emergent or emerging trends, you know, do you have any ideas of how you manage the bubble versus something that's actually going to make change? Do you have sort of those internal or gut instincts that you've honed throughout your years as marketing leaders, or is it something a bit more substantial, or is it just trial and error?
Yeah, I think you have to explore it. You have to use it yourself. I mean, in order to understand the basics, how things operate, you need to play with these tools. How can you guide your teams? How can you update the management team and saying what are the opportunities and threats unless you immerse yourself with the technology? So I think this is a big part of it. And again, it's such an early days. So where we are today, and it's accelerating such a big, fast pace, I can only imagine where we are already 1-2 years ahead. And AI, I mean, we use it every day even without knowing. If you look at the Microsoft Office, if you look at the voice-to-text translation on WebEx, I mean, all things real time. Well, what is it? It's all embedded. Even the designer on a PowerPoint, that actually uses some artificial intelligence. The selections you make, it will propose different things. So I think we use it more than we know.
AI definitely.
And the question is more that maybe ChatGPT kind of really created that big bang and saying like, wow, there's a new way to use search engines, but it has nothing to do with that. It's so much more.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, you're going to hear about all of these and they do excite us, but actually layer it back onto your go-to-market. What is your go-to-market? What are your big bets for marketing and for your organisation? Where have you got gaps? And actually, where could some of this emerging or new technology help? And then almost task various team members to go off and investigate. Right, you're going to do chat for me, you're going to do this. Go off and investigate, see what it's all about. Come back and make some recommendations, and then we can evaluate and see if that could help us in this journey in our go-to-market strategy. Because you could, although I think you could get too excited, as you say, you went off in a rabbit hole, but I think we could go off as leaders on a thing because we're excited by it, but actually does it help us get to our goals?
And I think there's an element of needing to temper that and balance it with the legalities, the corporate brand position, all of that needs to be factored in. And sometimes it's not intuitive for our more junior team members. You know, you need to kind of have that open conversation as well of the cautions and the dimensions to think about, you know, so that it is balanced.
Am I right in thinking that we haven't really been in this position before with something so vastly potential?
Well, I think if you look at MarTech in general, you know, go back to 2011, there were MarTech suppliers, technologies. I was looking at this, the chief MarTech, you know, Scott Brinker. So I was looking at the growth of just the volume of technology that's out there in MarTech. 2011, it was something like 150. It's now 11,000.
It's crazy.
That's in 10 years. So that's what the difference between that and generative AI is, you know, that happened in the last 3-4 months. You know, massive explosion. Whereas
the speed.
The MarTech space is still an explosion. It's just taken, you know, a number of years. And there's so much choice for people outside, which most of it now claims to be AI infused in every technology, you know, it's in everything. I think the real problem you have for people is sorting the wheat from the chaff, how you do that, and how does it relate to our business and our business plan and our marketing plan? And I'm a massive advocate in, I don't really want to train the team in technology. I'm good with that, and they can go and do that. I'd rather train them in marketing fundamentals first, understand what you're trying to do from the business, be a strategic marketer first, and then use those tools in the right way.
And I suppose that's a nice figure, 11,000, because my next question was going to be, what's overlooked, but presumably quite a lot.
There's loads.
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
There's loads.
Any that come to mind that you use or you've heard of that you thought, I'd love to, if we could use that, but just haven't got the budget or the time, and then that hasn't got the airtime that we
All
think
of them?
that-
No, they're all existing for, someone had a good idea and went off and got funding or, and came up with this great piece of MarTech. I think there are so many that we overlook, and some of it I think goes back to the basics. We all know, a lot of the things we should be doing. We talk about data, we talk about analytics, still don't think we're doing that well enough. And, if we go back to, early 2000s and some of the technology we used, there were only a few players. Now in each spot, there are tens, if not hundreds of players. So there's so much we're overlooking. So I think to go back is, what is it you're looking to achieve? What's your business plan? What's your go-to-market? Where have you got the gaps and what could you... And then, going out and I try to encourage my team to go learn. And I'm sure we all do. We get
pilot things and
newsletters.
just try them. Yeah.
So where do you look?
Oh.
I can give example.
Yeah.
I'm going back to find a good project management tool for marketing organization. Because, again, too many tools. My teams use 5 to 6, and on top of that, Excel sheet always as a 7th option.
There's always an Excel spreadsheet.
That's
Google
mental.
Sheets.
Every tool requires integration, data integration, workflow integration, all this. And it takes so much time and effort and cost. So going back to basics and saying, how do I make sure that any market impulse or any internal stakeholder request can be automized, digitalized, put in a workflow management, send it to the right people so they can work on it. And there are good tools for that, by the way, without saying names. But that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just saying, guys, let's stop this madness. Still emails, still WhatsApp chats. Can you do this or that? How you keep track on that? Let's go back to basics. And like I said, basics, I don't mean let's go back to all boring and bad and old technology. There's new and better tools, but we tend to now lean on back to whatever we had 5 years ago in a company. And we don't have the courage to change because project management tool is so boring.
And then you have different departments, because I was smiling at the WhatsApp, the email, we've got Slack, we've got a company chat. Instagram, and my phone goes off and I have to really find out where, which, who, or it says Maytab or someone nice. So I know the person's name, but I can't work out what they've actually messaged me on.
It's interesting. I think one of the areas I was always... So my background was in MarTech for years, and I was always hopeful that real-time interaction management and personalisation, at scale was going to work. I think it's very inside out, that thinking where, look, how are we going to target people, where really what I was hoping it was going to be, how do I make that experience better for somebody that's visiting us and help them buy. And I think localisation of content and things like that's an area that people don't really consider now. So if you think our jobs are to engage with customers in a way that helps them, makes them buy and ultimately drive profit for the business. But really, when you're trying to do that at scale with every single customer and you're just focusing on personalisation, oftentimes, especially in the UK and the US where most technology businesses are, it's always in English, things like that. This area of how do you personalise and localise at the same time. And ultimately, I'd really like it, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, is how do you use these technologies across your base layer of tech to actually make every interaction pretty good for the customer, relevant, personalised, tailored, in their language, whatever that might be, in their context as well.
And that's flipping it back to that in the eyes of the customer, flipping it to the customer.
It's an area I don't think it actually worked or is working yet.
I would say personalization, going about overhyped topics in B2B.
Yes.
I mean, it would be lovely. In practice, never works. At least so far, at least
Not
where
yet.
I
That's
work.
where I'm thinking this
because
stuff
the
might
back
help.
end is so fragmented. In order to do full hyper-personalization, you need all your pieces together. And very few enterprises today actually have back end where you can pull all this.
But that interoperability and composability, headless, all of that kind of stuff, it's moving into that direction.
It is.
I'm totally with you. I'm not saying it's there.
I know, it's a human doing it.
And you are
exactly.
seeing, I've been looking at this, you are seeing customer data platforms where it is integrating all of your different pieces. You say it, some sits here, some there, and it's pulling it all together.
Yeah.
But I think the piece that's missing, which you've just touched on, is how do we then apply that for really cool personalisation?
But even for CDP, and I've done a few in my companies, it's also a rabbit hole, because what you end up doing is you maintain the legacy backend, which is highly expensive, tens of millions for large companies to run this fragmented backend, and you put CDP to normalize the data, which then allows you to do something. But what you also do is now you give a right to exist for all of these legacy platforms, and you never fixed your data model in the first place. So in terms of cost sensitiveness,
I think that's one of the overhyped areas that I think in the last few years.
They call it ecosystem, don't they?
Yeah, I think ecosystem's right. I get the ecosystem's exactly right. CDP, on the other hand, is just a layer on top of
it's
a
almost,
layer.
it's like a plaster on
Band-Aid.
it is
exactly
on top
right.
of.
It does a good thing. It is a good thing to have, but the problem is that you're gonna eventually run out of budgets, because what you do with CDP is you don't stop all the license, the waste of time, all the broken processes.
Totally, you've got to look at it. CDP, what is it that we're collecting and why are we doing that? What benefit of that? And if my whole philosophy was, if it's about real-time engaging with customers, I need to know a bit about them personal, but I need the insight of their behaviour, their context. If I grab that, and I don't need reams, I don't need to know your shoe size to sell you a newspaper. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't need to know everything about somebody, and I certainly don't need to store that in every snowflake or whatever. Although I do think connected data is great, but it's the right connected data, and that's the challenge for businesses.
How often do you all get to sort of have these kind of conversations?
Not a lot.
This is great.
So when we think about, how MarTech should evolve for marketers and not for the tech providers providing the tech, how then do you think marketers should collaborate to shape that? I mean, is there any kind of proactivity that could be in place, or is that sort of a position?
Well, I'll tell you 3 places I would advise anyone to look at the moment is the chiefmartech.com website with Scott Brinker, Juan Mendoza, who runs a thing called the MarTech Weekly. He's in Australia, but he's very good. And then Franz Remersma, I'm going to say that wrong, sorry, Franz, who runs Marketing Tribe. And if you can triangulate some of those good thinkers, because they do the data research, they'll do the aggregation. I also, I give a little bit of lip service to people like Forrester and Gartner and all those guys, because they are good. You just have to temper that. If you're not in big business, they're not necessarily for you. But I think you have to make sure that your teams have those places to go and look and think about it, and then discuss how do you get that into your forums. As I said, we do kind of a weekly stand-up, and I have one where it's just talking ideas. Just tell me what you're thinking, and it's not me talking about the business. So I think that's one way, but I also think communities like Hot Topics, a fantastic way of getting us together and talking about these things, because I'm always kind of like there, the same as you're kind of there, and I'm always pointing downwards usually when I'm talking, and it's very rare that I go level and say, what are other people sort of doing that are making their decisions? Am I making the right one? Can I talk to you guys about it?
Who else is experienced?
Exactly. Who do I talk to? I'm an agony aunt for everyone else.
But I would love to expand it even, again, we discussed the CIOs, CFOs. I mean, I see the big gap. It's nice to know we share the same pains.
Yes.
And we have even some solutions. Oh, that's a good idea. Let me try that. But I see the biggest hurdle for marketing to evolve is really this connection to commercial, connection to IT, internal IT, whether you love it or hate it. I have my point of view of that, and the CFO. So do they really understand what we are doing, how we are doing it, and how could we do it better? I mean, again, allowing this horrible tools and legacy to remain because somebody invested millions many years ago, and today you could fix it fairly fast, fairly cost effectively, and probably reduce a lot of complexity. So that would be interesting for me as well, to get CIO or internal IT leader, whoever, on this table to explain how do they think. Because I see them as a cost center attitude. I try to minimize the cost, but only way to minimize it is actually kill the legacy. And this is the logic I don't always understand when I have my conversations.
Yeah, I think you always have to speak the language of your exec team when you're a marketer now. So you go less into the detail of all the function, all the tactical stuff, and you then you become a business leader, and you have to be able to talk to the
You have to
CFO,
talk-
the CIO,
yeah.
the CEO, and you have to be able to put what can be quite laborious, complex marketing things into language that people understand, that makes a
Generally
difference to the
slides
business.
with a flow chart on.
Exactly, yeah.
And
it's not
underneath
the
it,
lowest
very
common.
simple,
I'm not
3
saying
colours
it's the lowest common denominator, but I'm saying you have to
Here's the
simplify some of the
subjective, and
concepts.
here's how, yeah.
Yes.
Exactly, and it's all about outcomes. as
Just
well.
want to close with 2 more questions I think, before we close the session. It has gone very, very fast. So you mentioned earlier on in the conversation about education, the education piece. What does that look like then in the context of what we've been discussing for you and for the team?
I mean, I think it's a constant challenge to teams actually to upskill to data, insights, that building the right mindset, building knowledge of technology tools, and understanding it's everybody's job to do that, not just a focused team, right? That we all have to have a good understanding to be an effective marketer right now. So, I think that can take many and varied forms, from formal education to networking. I really encourage my team to lift their heads up and look outside the organisation on a regular basis to see what others are doing, to get inspired by others, and invite people, like marketing leaders here, to come and talk to my teams and challenge them and give them another perspective. I think that's really important.
And lastly, Louise, given you're our resident AI expert, at least in this discussion, what are you excited about specifically and the tools you're using this year?
Well, I work in embedded insurance, so we use data points and AI to give you the right travel insurance. But I'm very excited about it becoming even more seamless, using it properly, not just skimming the surface. Personalisation, getting my name right, that's the easy bit. Getting what I need right in various aspects. So for me, it's not hyper-personalisation. I'd say it's AI used so it makes the customer's life easier in that way. Because there's an awful lot of AI that's being used and it's actually making it more difficult because they're not using it right. So I think, get the AI right and you've got the right, you've got a marriage between the customer, the marketeer and the product. It'll be
So maybe then that's a way to close off the entire conversation, a way to differentiate between a bubble and a trend, as the latter actually helps the customer as the bubble just
absolutely
pops.
spot on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much for this conversation. Wonderful to have you at the studio at Abbey Road Studios. And we'll see what happens next year with AI in particular.